Everyone knows that depression is caused by a chemical imbalance in the brain. But do you actually know how that theory first came to be? So, when tuberculosis was still around and people were trying to look for a cure, someone accidentally synthesized a drug which inhibited the breakdown of serotonin, so it increased serotonin levels. And what they saw was that in tuberculosis patients, they became more energized and they had their mood a little bit lifted. And so someone thought, well, if it worked for them, maybe it works for depressive patients. And they gave it to them and saw that their mood was improved. And that was enough. That was it. Even though the efficacy wasn't that good because they used a bunch of vague qualitative measures to assess depression evolution, even though their numbers were very, very small, and even though there was no placebo controls, that was enough to base the theory of depression on the premise of a chemical imbalance. So the logic behind this is very simple. If increasing your serotonin levels improves your mood, then your low mood must be a consequence of low serotonin, right? Of course not. Would you say that, for example, drinking wine, because drinking wine improves your bad mood, then your bad mood was created in the first place by a lack of drinking wine? Of course not. However, this theory has not changed much since its first creation and the creation of the first antidepressants, which is really not a surprise. Antidepressants provide a very convenient, practical way to treat depression. And especially in this context, this current context where depression rates have dramatically gone up. Doctors prescribe these antidepressants and just send their patients on their merry way, and this very easy, too easy way. The thing is that all would be well, all would be fine even if only they worked. But they don't. And I discovered a review paper that was published in 2008 by Kirsch and his team, which completely changed my mind as a neuroscientist. And they essentially came to the conclusion that there is no difference, no clinically significant difference between the effects of placebo and the effects of antidepressants. And here I'm going to cite them. Antidepressants are supposed to work by fixing a chemical imbalance, specifically a lack of serotonin in the brain. Their supposed effectiveness is the primary evidence for the chemical imbalance theory. But analysis of the published and the unpublished data that were hidden by drug companies reveals that most, if not all, of the benefits are due to the placebo effect. Some antidepressants work by increasing it, some by decreasing it, and some have no effect at all on serotonin. Nevertheless, they all show the same therapeutic benefit, which means that the therapeutic benefit is independent on the levels of serotonin. Then, in 2020, there was another meta-analysis published by Moncrief and her team, which was a further step down the rabbit hole for me, and that essentially showed that there was no connection between serotonin and depression. And so therefore, that this idea that depression has some form of genetic predisposition is completely false, that the people that are sold this idea of a broken brain have been lied to this whole time. And here I'm going to cite them as well. So they show that the main areas of serotonin research provide no consistent evidence of there being an association between serotonin and depression, no support for the hypothesis that depression is caused by lowered serotonin activity or concentrations. So, besides the placebo effect, which accounts for all of the bettering of the psychological condition, what else do these drugs do? And here it's where it gets pretty bleak, because antidepressants creates a lot of pretty significant side effects. Here is a list of all the side effects that I found, but I'm going to ask you to pay particular attention to insomnia, which is one of the predispositions for the surge of depression, and most importantly, permanent sexual dysfunction. And so it really makes me wonder whether we are willing to risk all of these side effects, which, as we just saw, some of them are even permanent and are not just something that like permanent, I don't know, permanent hair loss on the arms, I don't know, something random, but it's permanent sexual dysfunction, which can really affect the capacity for some people to have children in the future, knowing that a lot of these antidepressants are being prescribed to young children, to young teenagers and young people even. Are we willing to risk all of these side effects, the possibility of the induction of a biological fragility, for the sake of something that is most likely to improve over time? Because most depressions end up resolving themselves with time. Is this something that we are willing to risk? Are doctors informing enough their patients about the potential risks of taking antidepressants, especially in the long term? Because, like I always say, I'm never extreme about anything. And there may be a time and a place to take antidepressants because it may be the most quick, efficacious solution that exists at a certain time point. But it's, in my perspective, something that can only be taken very punctually, not something that is to be taken permanently, which is the case for most people that then develop a chronic dependence on these drugs. So is this something that doctors are sharing with their patients? And if they're not sharing with their patients, which is also happening quite often, why is that? On one hand, we know that most of them are not aware of the actual side effects of these drugs, and we also know that a lot of them are indirectly and directly influenced by pharmaceutical companies, which have, as you may imagine, a lot of interest behind the prescription of these antidepressants. Antidepressants are one of the most widely prescribed class of drugs in the world, so there is a lot of financial benefits when it comes to the prescription of these drugs to the most people possible. And then, what does this say about depression in general? If it is not a chemical imbalance, then what is it? Well, depression is a consequence of the state of the world that we're living right now. We are living in a desensitized world where people are too exposed to too many things all at once. We have too much information on all the good or all the bad, all the things that everyone is doing all the time. We are processing too much information, a lot of which pretty heavy information that we are not properly able to handle and to digest. We feel more isolated than ever. We have less friends than ever. We have less romantic relationships than ever. And all of this contributes to the fact that people have never been so depressed. And paired with that, as I was saying, we have the information of all the global catastrophes, all the wars, all the crises, all the fact that the world is going to end in 30 years due to X, Y, Z reason. And this is too much pressure on us to handle. However, there may also be a biological reason why you are depressed, which I would call kind of the core of it, the basis of depression. Most of us have become too detached from our nature to the point where we have a lot of biological, let's say, fragilities. There are a lot of vitamins, a lot of minerals, a lot of things that have to do with our diet, which are not in check and are not ideal, not even ideal, they're not even good. And so that creates kind of the predisposition, that is the actual predisposition, I believe, for depression. Thanks to my neuroscience degree, I was able to really read a lot of this research that currently exists. There is a lot of research on this that is not being implemented on a clinical level, but that it's there and it exists. So I created a protocol which kind of combines all of the different biological reasons why someone might be depressed. And I have created a community where people can join for free, of course. They can go see all the different things, all of the different supplements, different strategies, different diets that they may assume if they suspect they have this fragility. And I really believe that this is the future of psychiatry, which is not something that gives a one-size-fits-all drug to pretty much everyone. No, everyone has different body, a different type, different culture, different context that makes that they have these different biological fragilities that need to be addressed before we consider any other form of therapy. You may even after go to antidepressants, but first These things have to be in check. So if you're interested in lifting your mood or perhaps improving your depression, there's the link in the description and that you can join, of course, for free. In the end, the testimonies, the feedback that I would get from you would be essentially used as the basis of a research project that I want to create that I believe would shape the future of psychiatry. So if you're interested, you know what to do. With that being said, thank you for watching, and remember to always keep a critical spirit.